Welcome, everyone, to the Better Love Movement podcast, where you will finally learn how to intentionally do dating and relationships right. My name is Anita Stoudemire, and I'm a licensed professional therapist and your personal love mentor. I've worked with thousands of singles and couples, giving them the skills needed to attract and keep the amazing love they desire. It's my heart's work to help people to get the skills needed to not only become the very best versions of themselves, but to help them grow and evolve emotionally and relationally. You can absolutely have the romantic relationship of your dreams. Come and let me show you how. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me again this week for another episode of the Better Love Movement podcast. My name is Anita Stoudemire, and I am your resident licensed professional therapist and podcast host. This week, we are in episode number 144. It is entitled Dating After Divorce. And today I am talking with Daniel Herrold of the Intentional Dating Club. Let me tell you a little bit about Daniel. Daniel Herrold is a divorced dad of 3 daughters living in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He is one of the co-founders of Divorced Over 40, a recently formed group that provides community to divorced men and women across the world who are age 40 and above. This community provides support through content on its social media channels, as well as hosts events with a specific intention of fostering and cultivating friendships. The Divorced Over 40 community has enabled Daniel to pursue his passion for writing, where he writes on several topics, including his own personal divorce journey, dating over 40, and being a dad to 3 daughters. This led him to create the Intentional Dating Club, an online dating community created that provides techniques and tips on how to create a safer and more positive dating experience. You can find Daniel most prominently on Instagram at daniel.herrold or on TikTok at Daniel Herrold. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Anita. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Okay, so dating after divorce. There's a lot of people out there that have been through it, myself included. Okay, so here's one of the big questions I get asked sometimes is, how do you know when you're really ready to date after going through a divorce? What do you think?
Anita, I get that question a lot too. It just seems like there's a lot of self-doubt and uncertainty as to when it's time to dip your toe in those waters. My answer has always been consistent. And the way I respond is this: when you are happy being single, when you're excited about the outlook of your life, and dating isn't a primary focal point of your life of trying to find that connection, but you know that you're complete as a human being and that dating and finding someone is almost like icing on the cake, that's when you're ready to date. And the problem is so many people, when they come out of their divorce, and you probably see this in your practice, they dive into dating when they haven't emotionally healed from that trauma and they're not ready. And so you've got all this toxicity that is thrown into this dating pool. And that's why everybody gets so disenfranchised with it. It's because people haven't healed.
Right.
You really need to make sure that you've gotten through your healing process. But then more importantly, when you're excited about where you are in your stage of life, about being single, about where you're progressing, that's when you're ready. And that's honestly when you're the most attractive.
I 100% agree. So yes, this is going to be a process, and the process will oftentimes look different, depending on the person. So I 100% agree with that. And here's the thing I want you all to know, as I've told you all many times, we're not looking for perfection, right? So yeah, it's not going to be this, I'm perfectly, healed of everything. But we want you to be further down that road than you were like a month out of your divorce. That's all. Okay.
And there's not like a fine line, Anita, and you know this. Healing isn't linear. It's not like 12 months after your divorce, you'll be ready to go. I mean, you
Right.
just can't say that because every person is different and that trauma that they experienced
Mm-hmm.
with every person is different. Everyone has a unique divorce experience. And so you got to do the work. You got to feel excited about your future. And the key thing is take your time. Don't be restless or impatient. Allow that healing to really happen before you jump back into the pool.
That's right. Awesome. Okay. So, what steps do you take after the divorce to make sure that you're further down the road in that healing journey and you're ready to move forward? What are some of the steps you recommend?
Well, I think anything that's self-care related, where you're really investing in yourself, and there's so many things across that spectrum that you can invest in. I think first and foremost, whether you think you need one or whether you don't, you really probably need to go seek a licensed therapist and
Mm.
walk through your trauma.
Yep.
And that's something that I didn't do. I chose not to do it because I thought, well, I don't need that.
Mm.
But in hindsight, as I look back 3 years later, I wish that I had done that right at the point in which I got divorced, because I think my healing process would have accelerated.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had to deal with all of that myself, it just took so much longer.
Right.
And so it's a really good opportunity to hear from an expert. Just kind of validate what went wrong,
Mm-hmm.
how you played a part into potentially a failed marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and what you need to work on. Do you have attachment style? There's all sorts of things that you kind of have to deal with. And so I think first and foremost, go see a therapist. It's the best investment that you can make. And then there's all these other types of things that you can really focus on that are self-care that will just really allow you to heal. I think friendship is the great distractor when you're going through your pain.
Okay.
Because too often we get lonely and we're yearning for connection. And so what do? We dive on the dating app because we want that validation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Why don't you put all that energy on cultivating new friendships, because you lose a lot of them when you get divorced.
Right.
Go out and cultivate new friendships and let that be the distractor for you while you're healing. Go be social.
Right.
Hang out with your friends. And that's part of the reason why I created this divorce community, was to create an opportunity for people to meet like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think friendships is a huge one. And there's exercise, yoga, meditation. I journaled. I mean, my way of healing was journaling outwardly. Through this community, I was able to speak about my trauma and how I felt along the way, and that was incredibly healing to allow me just to kind of get that out from the inside out in words.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that you can do.
Awesome. And I love all of those things, especially the first one.
Yeah, right.
And I often tell people one of the greatest benefits of going to a professional therapist is our friends and family sometimes get worn out, like listening to our story or our pains over and over. And they're just like, seriously, you need to talk to somebody.
Right. And you don't want to talk to your attorney because he's just going to bill you for listening to you, right? Mm-hmm. And he doesn't have the expertise.
He's the last person. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I wish that I had done that. I don't think that I would have dated as early as I did as a result. I really would have probably worked on myself. I was unique in that I think that when you're dating someone in our age that's been divorced and they're able to articulate what they did wrong in their marriage, when they're introspective, they've done the work.
Right.
If they're just pointing the finger,
Yep.
They're still in their trauma. They're still hurting. They're bitter. They're angry. But if they're like, and look, there's always exceptions, physical abuse, narcissism, but generally speaking, it takes two to tango.
Yep.
And so you have to recognize, oh my gosh, this is how I contributed to a failed marriage, and this is what I need to work on.
Right. And you're exactly right. That's what I tell my ladies. That's one of the biggest red flags is you're going to ask the simple question, What did your marriage teach you, or what did you learn about your marriage and subsequent divorce? And if that person can't go in, if it's all about that other person's awful, what they did, run away. Because I'm
Right.
like, we need that, that person to look in. That's exactly right. So here's an interesting question. Is there a difference between men dating after divorce and as opposed to women dating after divorce? My primary audience is women, but
Right.
do you think there's a difference there?
You know, I was probably in a vacuum when I was doing it myself, but when I created this divorce community, topically dating came up a lot
Mm-hmm.
amongst the men and amongst the women.
Mm.
And in my dating journey, you know, it seems like every time you go out on a date with someone that's been divorced, it's going to pop up. Why'd you get divorced? You
Right.
may not word it that way, but you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to figure that out.
Right.
And so I have those conversations with a lot of women that I went on dates with, and it seemed to me, and I don't want to generalize, but a lot of women tend to not jump into dating too very early,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to just kind of go through a period of transition to where they can heal.
Mm.
Generally speaking, the women that I dated, I felt like took, whether it's 3, 6, 12 months before they
Mm.
started to date.
Mm-hmm.
The men are completely different. We just jump into the deep end
Yep.
head first.
Yep.
And a lot of times we'll jump in during the separation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so let me unpack that. I think first and foremost, men yearn for connection, particularly physically.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether it's sexual or just having the physical intimacy,
Right.
both parties want it, but I think men see dating as an opportunity to achieve that,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not willing to go through the healing process to do it. So a lot of men jump into dating because they get lonely, nobody's meeting their sexual needs, and they
Mm-hmm.
dive into it to try to fill that when they haven't really done the work. And
Right.
so that's why I think a lot of times women are frustrated because they'll come to me and said, "Why are men so emotionally immature?"
Mm.
Well, and my answer is because they're emotionally unhealed
Right.
because they're in it too early. And so
Yeah.
it's always a good litmus test as you're talking to someone to determine, you don't want to be dating someone that's going through a separation. You don't
Right.
want to be dating someone
Mm.
that's 3 months outside of their divorce.
Mm.
They're not ready. It doesn't matter what they can tell you or how they can validate that they've done the work, they've
Yeah.
seen a therapist along the way. It's completely different when the divorce decree officially occurs. That's the death of the divorce. It's the
Right.
burial of the divorce.
Right. Right.
And that's when true change actually starts and when healing can start to begin. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's always, it always makes me nervous when people say they're dating someone so early outside of a divorce, particularly women
Mm.
dating men, because
Uh,
most men are not ready.
100%. And you know what's funny? I love telling my clients this in my therapy practice. I tell them this in my coaching practice too. But I say, let me tell you the one piece of advice that I give to couples who are making that decision to end their marriage. The one piece of advice that most people don't take. Okay, and they say what? And I say, do not get involved with anyone during the separation or too soon after the divorce. 95% of people don't take that advice.
They don't. And
And
I have women say, "Well, how long?" And I'm like, you can't really. I started to just throw a date out there
right,
because I was like, at least 6 months
right,
after a
right,
divorce decree, if not
right,
12.
right.
There's no rule of thumb, but there's so many new norms for people when they actually divorce.
Mm-hmm.
You're living in a new place. You're co-parenting with kids
Right,
potentially. You're
right.
having to cook for yourself if you didn't
Yeah,
cook. You
yep,
have to pay the bills if you haven't paid.
yep.
You're dealing with all of these new things that occur. And the one thing that I learned just personally is what I was looking for in a woman when I was fresh out of my divorce to where I am today is
Mm-hmm.
180 degrees because
Mm.
I've gone through my healing and rediscovery. And you don't want to be that person that's dating someone that's going to change their view of thinking 12 to 18 months down the road and say, you
Right,
don't fit, you
right,
know?
Right. And that's real. That is real. So wow, you make a lot of really good points. Good points. So when you spoke a little bit about co-parenting, and that's super important because most folks, I think the percentage is something like 75, 76% of people who divorce are going to have children. And so what do you suggest for parents who want to begin dating after their divorce when it comes to their children?
Oh, wow, that's a great topic. I mean, let's maybe back up to the type of person that you would date. If you have
Mm,
kids that you're raising at home,
mm-hmm.
I really think that you want to date someone that's in the same stage of life.
Mm,
Because if you
mm.
don't, there's going to be friction.
Yep.
So if I'm a woman and I have a 5, 7, 9 year old at home, so I've got another 10 to 15 years of raising my kids before I'm truly an empty nester.
Right.
And I start dating a 50-year-old man whose kids are out of the house,
Mm,
there's going to be a lot of friction because he's going to demand more of your time.
right.
He's not going to appreciate, you know, that you don't have as much flexibility. And so
Mm-hmm.
it really makes sense to try to line up someone that's going through the exact same stage of life as you are, number one. Number two is, I'm a big believer, and maybe this is the old Dr. Laura philosophy. I don't know if you remember her
Oh
of,
God, I have all her books.
oh my gosh.
I have all-
I remember listening to her on the radio with my ex-wife as we were,
Mhm.
going on road trips, and how, she was at the extreme where it's like, you shouldn't date, period, until your kids are gone. I mean, that was her approach. And
Mhm.
times have changed,
Yeah, they have.
but
They have.
I do think that you need to shelter and protect your kids from the people that you're dating.
Of course.
You don't bring those people into their lives unless this is a serious, committed relationship
Yep.
and your kids are ready. It's
Right.
one thing to say, I'm ready,
Right.
but are your kids ready? And, all my girls were in high school. I had one in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only introduced them to one person who I'm with. It's my
Okay.
girlfriend. And
Mm-hmm.
and they knew that I was dating. And I just let it naturally occur where they started to be curious about, well, who are you dating? They started
Right.
asking
Right.
me questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it opened up the opportunity where they said, we want to meet her. It was
Okay.
never me impressing upon them that, hey, you're going to meet Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
She's coming to Thanksgiving.
Right.
And that varies by the age of your kids, but
Mm-hmm.
I am a big believer that you want to shelter your kids, but be mindful that your kids heal differently than you do from a
That's right.
divorce. And so that may be where you could rely on a therapist to help guide when the timing's right, how the conversation should take place.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of yielded to my kids. I let my kids take the lead on that. But it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't certainly until I was in a committed relationship. And I think third, Anita, is you just have to be flexible. You got to realize that kids are going to get sick.
Yeah.
You're going to have to leave, take people and carpool. And
Yep.
your flexibility is so limited when you're raising kids. And you just have to understand that maybe the guy that you're going to go on a date with cancels last minute because, their kid has COVID or the
Right.
flu.
That's
And you
right.
can't start to build resentment or say, well, I'm not going to date them because they were rude. I mean, just things are going to happen. You're going to have a little bit more empathy
Right.
with
Right.
people that you date.
Right. And my personal experience has been, so who I wanted prior to being married and having children is very different than who I wanted post divorce. So
Amen.
prior to, I was like, I don't really, I'm not a good fit for men who have children. Then I get married to a man who doesn't have children, as I don't. We create a family together. We divorce. And then it was, I don't date men without children. So
Right.
it was like, it was so interesting. My friends were like, wow, you're like totally opposite. I said, because I need to have that in common, that they
They
can
got to get
understand. Right.
it's alignment of experiences, right?
Exactly.
They get
Exactly.
it. They know
Yep.
that you're crazy busy and you're exhausted and you may come
Yep.
to a date and you look frazzled and that's
Yep.
okay,
That's
right?
it. And the same. Yeah, they totally got it. Now, I've changed again. So my friends are like, here we go. I was like, I'm an empty nester. I have 3 children, but they're all in college or older. And I'm not a good fit for a man with a 5-year-old. And
Right.
that has been a thing where I'm meeting all these amazing men and they have a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old. And I'm like, I kind of don't want to go back to that. I love my life, and I love the life that I've created, and I'm in my business, and I'd love to share all of that with someone, but an empty nester like me would be a really good fit. So
Yeah.
yes,
I get the,
100%.
I get the, how old, what about the age discrepancy? And I go back to the same premise. Don't think about how wide the age is. Think about the stage of life.
I
Where are
agree.
you in your
Yep.
stage of life?
Yep.
And does that person align with it? Because if they don't, it's just going to create friction. It's going to be
That's right.
hard.
Right. And
And there may not be a lot of,
unnecessary. Yeah.
there may not be a lot of give and take. And so could an 80-year-old woman date a 55-year-old man? They're at the same stage of life if he's retired, and
Right.
sure, right?
Right.
So that age difference could be wider, I think, as you get older, because you tend to, if you're retirement, you're in your sunset years, you can, but I think when you get into the 45-year-old men dating the 30-year-old women,
Right.
and now we're seeing a lot of younger men date the 40, 45, 50-year-old women.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Are there exceptions? Yes. People will restart families.
Mm-hmm.
Men will have kids again after being an empty nester, but I think there are exceptions to the rule.
Right. And I 100% agree with that. I'm always telling people that about most of my advice is I'm teaching you all the rule, not the
Right.
exception to the rule. That's what
That's
I'm talking about.
That's a great point.
Yep. So 100% we are aligned, but yes, I have all of Dr. Laura's books and people have often compared me to her because I'm pretty no nonsense.
Good.
I'm like, hey, don't do
We
that.
need to stop making things so gray. Just
Right.
let it, they need to be black and white, right?
Yep.
And I think too many times we gray things, we make things too gray and too cloudy, when in reality,
Right.
it's black or white, and you can make a lot quicker decisions if you look at it from that lens.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Lastly, what are your thoughts, or almost lastly, what are your thoughts about the whole online dating? So this is like a boom now. In the last 10 years or so, the online dating, the app dating. What are your thoughts about that? What are some do's and don'ts when you're thinking about online dating?
Well, I looked at a stat yesterday. I think as of 2019, there's 35 million
Ooh.
adults in the U.S. that have been on the apps,
Wow.
and the percentage that are over 55, I think, is over 50%. So you have a much larger demographic of baby boomers that are getting onto the online apps because unfortunately, they're getting divorced.
Mm.
And so, it's a reality that most or a lot of people are going to use the apps.
Mm.
And I have a lot of people in my community that have been married 15, 20, 25 years or widowed.
Mm.
And they come out of their trauma and they're like, dating's changed so much. I have no idea where to begin. And the first question they ask me is, what app should I get on? And I always say, okay, wait a minute. That's the wrong first step.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is to go back and let's do a little bit of prep work to prepare yourself for jumping into the online dating.
Right.
And so that's whether you hire a dating coach, you listen to podcasts, you read some good books, you join my club. You really need to develop, going back into dating, particularly online dating, is not like riding a bike where you just jump back on the bike and you know how to do it because you learned how to do it when you were 10 or 8. It's completely different. It's like riding a whole different type of vehicle. And you have to become prepared to learn the tricks, not the tricks, but the tips, and develop the skills so that you can discern people.
Right.
The art of dating is the ability to discern, does this person have character? Is this person being honest? Do actions speak louder than words? And really being able to kind of look with a different lens at each person. And too many times, I think people just jump onto dating, they haven't done the prep work, and they just get chewed up and spit out.
Right.
Because it's an incredibly toxic environment, generally speaking. And so that would be my advice: is go do the prep work, get yourself trained and knowledgeable on how to navigate it, and then just go slow.
Right.
Have fun, have a good attitude, and have fun. It's an opportunity with every date that you go on to learn a little bit more about yourself, and learn a little bit more about what you want and what you don't want. Every encounter gives you that opportunity. Oh, I don't want that trait.
Yeah.
Or I really loved how this guy handles his family.
Right.
Or every opportunity registers in your brain. My daughter, who's 20,
Mm-hmm.
she keeps a list on her phone of all the things all the attributes that she wants in a future husband.
Mm-hmm.
And every person that she dates, she goes back to that list and she
Smart.
edits it.
Yep. Smart
Well,
girl.
I really like this. I didn't teach her how to do that, Anita. She did it herself.
Mm-hmm.
But experiences are creating an opportunity for her to develop wisdom that she can apply going forward. So take your time, go have fun, learn more about yourself, but more importantly than of anything at all, do the prep work. Prepare yourself because it can be warfare out there.
Right, right. Those are some great, great tips. I myself have deleted all of the apps forever. Now, that was my personal decision. I had been doing research with dating apps for over 2 years. So I had been on all of the apps, not all of them, but I'd been on maybe 7 apps, and I had done that for 2 straight years. I am a data person. People who know me, they know I love research, I love data. And so I wanted to gain my own data on the apps and do my own research, and really, like, I immersed myself in this for 2 whole years. But December 31st, I deleted all of those apps forever in my mind. And I came away with some data that I like to share with my community, that I like to share with women, just as you said, to kind of get them prepared.
Right.
I do believe that there can be value there, but man, it's like a loaded gun, right? You cannot just pick that thing up and think you're gonna, spin it around and you're just naturally gonna know how to shoot. No, no, no. Like, you need training. You need training, or you're gonna hurt yourself. That's what I tell people. You need to get training on these apps, okay?
And I tell people that the good men and the good women that are on there are really rare gems. And you have to do some hard rock mining to find those gems. They're not out visible.
Yep.
You're going to be dealing a lot with a bunch of copper coins all along the way.
Yep.
And to find those gems is going to take time. It's going to take the ability to filter. And it's a marathon. It's not a race. It's not the end all be all. Dating apps are not the only source that you can meet people. There's lots of other ways that you can meet people. It's just one pond that you can fish in.
Right.
But you're right. To some people, they either get a disillusion with it, they look at the statistics and see that really the apps are intended to keep you on the apps, not to get you off the apps.
Yep.
And so they want to try a different approach. And there's a lot of other healthier approaches that you can try to find, someone to potentially date.
Right, right. Awesome, awesome. So here's a question I tend to ask everyone who comes on the show, because we are seeing, especially in the last maybe 2 years, we're seeing this gender war develop where you've got the red pill guys and you've got MGTOW, but then you've also got on the women's side, maybe extreme feminism, or just women who are all men are jerks, all men, all men are bad. And we got this gender war going. And I want to, myself personally, see a culture that brings men and women back together. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, it's so funny you're asking me this, because I just wrote on chivalry this past week and how it's a lost art, and how the message this is a great example of one aspect of the dating process or the gender battle is that how chivalry has in many cases been manipulated by certain men, but also how it's misconstrued by many women.
Right.
And I wanted to just kind of say, let's unpack it, and let's really talk for what it really is, what chivalry's real intended purpose is. And it's to lift others up and to pay respect and to treat someone. It's not to get something in return. It's not to demonstrate that I'm better than you, or I'm at a higher level than you. And it was so refreshing hearing so many responses from women and men saying, that's it.
Yeah.
Why can't we go back to the basics,
Right.
and talk about the way that a man should approach and the man should respect a woman?
Right.
And we need to get back to that. And I think that there's a lot of people in dating that want to go back to maybe some of the more traditional gender roles and how men treat women and how women treat men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a big believer in strong, driven, powerful women. I have 3 daughters. I want them to be strong. I want them to have a voice. But at the same time, I want them to be attracted to men that will treat them with respect, that will show chivalry, that will open doors for them, that will pay for the first date. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things that a man should be doing to demonstrate, I want to spend more time with you, and I'm going to hold you in high regard in order to have that opportunity to spend with you.
That's it.
So it's something that it is a problem, but I do think that there's a large pool of people, single adults, that want to kind of go back to some of the healthier aspects of how men and women interact.
And I agree with that. And that's mainly what my platform is about. So I specialize in reintroducing femininity to women,
Love it.
reclaiming their femininity, and being attracted to healthy masculine men. That's not a toxic thing. A masculine man is not a toxic thing. It's a good thing. And just being open. And I'm also a big traditional gender roles. So I get a lot of flack about that, but that's the marriage that I had. I was a stay-at-home mom for
Same.
12 years. I was a housewife, so I'm big into that too, which, some modern day women don't like, but I am a big believer that who you choose to do life with, who you partner with, who you have children with, like those are the things that are really going to determine your happiness and your joy in life. My work is great. I'm very passionate about the work that I do, but the biggest part of my life is my family, my children, my partner, who I choose to do life with. And so, yes,
Yeah.
I tell women that yes, your work is great. That's wonderful. But I really want you to focus on this other part of your life that I believe is going to be a bigger part of your life. That's a more long-standing part of your life. One of my most recent posts was about, I am replaceable at work. I am irreplaceable at home.
Yeah.
And so I want
Wow.
women to breathe that in. If I keeled over and couldn't do what I do at work, okay, people will find another therapist.
Right.
But my children are not going to get another mother. My mom's not going to get another daughter. So, yes, I want women to breathe that in. That's a
And
big
the
part. Yeah.
and the ability for, and I totally get, and I'm an advocate for women to be career driven and strong and
Mm-hmm.
have a voice, but to be able to weave into their feminine side.
Right.
They
Right.
tend to be a lot in their masculine side when they're outwardly, but to be able to weave into the feminine side is super attractive to a man.
Very much.
And the man's only going to lift you up even more if
Yep.
you're able to do that.
That's it.
And quick example, my girlfriend lets me order for her when we go to a nice restaurant. Now,
Ooh,
I
I love
don't
it.
I don't order what she's like, hey babe, will you order this and this for me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like people would think, well, how is that a big deal? But oh my gosh, it's so masculine for me to do it.
Yep.
And it's in no way I'm saying I'm better than you, so she's asking me to do it. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
little thing and I'm like, that's so sexy.
Yep.
And she finds it incredibly sexy for me to be able to do that. It's just like one little thing, but there's a true art to women that are very strong-willed, strong-driven, confident
Mm-hmm.
women to weave into and sometimes yield to the man and allow
Right.
the man to be masculine. And that's
Mm-hmm.
like a perfect symbiotic relationship, I think. So we're
It
aligned there.
is. It is. And I teach my girls, I say vulnerability is your superpower.
It
That is your
is.
superpower.
It
So
really is.
lean into that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show this week. This has been a wonderful conversation. I know it's going to add so much value to my listeners. Tell us, is there a service or product or something that you'd like to promote?
Well, I'm really excited about this club that I've created. So it's a membership only club. It's $10 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And what I created, what I noticed in the dating space is that there's not a lot of places where people can have community.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really good coaches. There's lots of people in the industry that provide content where you can engage, but I wanted to create an ability where the dater can communicate with the dater. And so I created this safe place where people can go in and they can share their stories. They can ask for advice, and they're getting it from their peers. And, we've got over 100 people in the club already, and it's growing. And, it's a great place to kind of for iron sharpen iron. It's kind of my mentality. For you can go in there, learn from other people and the wisdom that they've gained so that you can go out and level up your dating experience. So if you'll visit, probably the best place is visit my website, which is theintentionaldatingclub.com.
Okay.
And there's all sorts of details on how to sign up for the club.
Awesome. I'm going to put all of this information in the show notes. And ladies, I am going to put Daniel's Instagram account, his TikTok account, the website, and all of this information in the show notes. So I want you to head over there and check it out. If this is something you believe could be of value to you, it sounds like something I need to join. So please check it out. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Ladies, if you are not subscribed to the podcast, please, please, please do me the biggest favor ever and subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast platform that you listen, or you can head over to the YouTube channel and you can subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can see the video of the podcast. I would so appreciate that. Please do me the biggest favor ever and rate and review the podcast. That helps to broaden our reach. That helps to get this information out, all of this wonderful free content for you. That helps me so much to continue to make content for you. If you'd like more information on me and the services that I offer, you can head over to betterlovemovement.com, learn all about me and my coaching services. Check out the book that has been out now for a good little while, but the follow-up is coming next month. So my first book, Choose Well, A Simple Formula to Determine the Best Man for You. But next up is the follow-up, which is called Do Well, A Feminine Woman's Guide to Relationship Success. So I gave you all that formula. That second book is coming for all of my ladies who are in relationships. How do you maintain it? How do you, do the things that you need to do to have the best relationship possible? That's what the follow-up book is about. So coming soon. Keep watching. Thank you so much, Daniel, again for joining us today. And as always,
thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yep. Stay open to love. Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you are enjoying this podcast, please leave me a 5-star rating and review. Your ratings and reviews help me to continue to bring you more great content. Head on over to YouTube and check out the Better Love Movement channel. There's more video content there, and you can subscribe to be notified when a new video is posted. If you have a question that you would like to have answered on the podcast or in a YouTube video, please send it to me at info@betterlovemovement.com. You can also connect with me directly on the Magnify app to have your dating and relationship questions answered. That's MAGNIFI, and it's available on iOS and Android. You get your first 5 minutes for free. So give me a call and let's chat.